what is forgiveness? And how does forgiveness work? So we call this the path to freedom, because when you learn how to forgive, you literally are able to create freedom within yourself. And as I've talked about this before, we are energy. And every emotion, every event, every step of our life is an energy. And so we have so many things that we're dealing on. We're all on our own path. And wherever you are on that path, it's perfect. It may not feel like it. You may not believe that it's perfect, but it is perfect, because it's perfect that you are right where you are to be in order to take the next step of where you're going to be. And forgiveness is a big part of our path. I want you to think about when you were a child, there were many things that were going on in your world. And in psychology, it is said that our personalities are completely developed by about the time we're 7 years old, right around that time. And then we have other things in our life that could have an impact, but from the time that you're born, well, actually from the time that you're in the womb until about 7, your personality is developing, your perception of the world. And as a child, there are many things that can happen to us that give us some form of trauma or grief or pain or revenge or feelings or any type of feeling that comes from fear. And what we know is that in many cases, children develop this lack of forgiveness for some things that happened in their life when they were children. And so we carry that forward in our life. And there are many things that happen that could be somewhat what we might think are somewhat insignificant, but to a child it's very significant. And you know, it could be a child saying, well, my parents didn't raise me very well. Well, that's their perception, because you've all heard the statement, and I've said it many times, as a parent, you do the best you can. You do the best with what you know, and it is incumbent as a parent to continue to learn and grow as you work with your children. And of course, things happen in our lives as families, and we learn and we grow. So, you know, I wanted to talk about forgiveness because it's so important in today's world. And it's one of the most powerful spiritual practices that we can actually embark on, whether you know that or not. And what it is that it's not about excusing behavior. It's not about ignoring pain or denying your right to feel hurt. Because you can feel hurt. We talked about love and fear and the two emotions, and that a lot of what we feel in fear comes from being hurt or being in pain. But we can transmute that. And what it really is about is freeing yourself from an event or an episode or something that's been going on in your life. You're basically freeing yourself, you know, from something that you might think holds you hostage. And it could be anything. And today, I'm actually going to go through what I like to call 7 steps of forgiveness and how we start to forgive. And one thing I really want to stress is that forgiveness is not just a one-time thing. It is actually an attitude. It's actually a behavior. And we may say, oh, I had this huge issue in my life. I'm going to forgive that, and that'll free me, and I will never have to forgive again. I'll be okay. That's not true. We have many, many things that go on. There's little things, and there's big things. And sometimes it is the little things that will eat at us. You know, it's like, you know, remember the fairy tale story, The Princess and the Pea? And it was about the fact that the prince wanted to marry a true royal princess. And all these women would start showing up at the door. Oh, I'm the real princess. I'm the real princess. And his mother knew that a princess was very sensitive. And so she put a pea, like a dried pea, on a mattress, and then she put about 20 mattresses on top of that and some feather beds on top. And she would have each woman claim that she was the princess sleep on that mattress. If they did not feel the pee, then they were not the princess, because they weren't sensitive to that little something. And so ultimately the real princess shows up, and the next morning after she wakes up, she's like, oh my goodness, I'm in terrible pain and my back hurts, and there was something in the mattress all night long. So she was sensitive to that issue. And so something as little as a pee can create an irritation in our life until we learn how to forgive that. And once you do that, you reclaim your power. And sometimes you're carrying a lack of forgiveness that you're not even aware of, that you don't even know you have it until something triggers it or something brings it up. So what I want you to do today, and we're going to talk about the steps of forgiveness, but I'm also going to give you a handout today that you can take with you. And if you want to go through the process of forgiving, you can actually work through this worksheet. And you can use this worksheet over and over and over to deal with anything that's going on, and maybe even things that you haven't thought of, but things that you might want to forgive. And there's different levels of forgiveness. Like I said earlier, there's tragedies, things that some people say I can never forgive, and maybe they can't and they don't, but they carry an energy that's not healthy for them. When we talk about forgiveness, sometimes, especially when you go into revenge, if you're in revenge against someone, it's like you taking poison and expecting them to die. Because that's how much it creates a lack of health, a lack of freedom, a lack of emotional balance, because you're the one that's being eaten up. You're the one that's dealing with the pain of something. And unfortunately, the person that you're directing it at probably doesn't even know it, doesn't feel it, unless you're doing things toward them. You know, there's been a lot of people in the world that have given great forgiveness. Some of the examples is Nelson Mandela. How many years was he in prison? And then when he finally was out, he said, okay, I forgive you. I forgive the country. And then what did he do? He went on to become a great leader of peace, a great leader of many things. Recently, several years ago, there was a school shooting in an Amish community. And the Amish community, all of the individuals in that community came together and said, we forgive that individual. Many of them lost their own children. Many of them lost friends' children. And yet they came together, they prayed, they agreed as a community that they are to forgive, and they forgave, and they let it go, they moved on. Now, that's probably one of the hardest things in the world to do, especially if it's the loss of a child or the loss of someone that's dearly loved, and then you have to forgive, maybe if it was a situation where it was a person that caused that. I know the other day I was flipping through the channels on television, and there was there's Court TV, and I happened to just be watching it for a moment, and there was a family that was giving their statement towards someone who had killed their daughter in a car accident. And it was a young woman, actually, who had been drinking, and the daughter had just gotten married, and they were literally in the little golf cart driving down the road to leave, and this girl hit them, and the bride died. And I remember the family standing up, and I remember the father turning to the girl and saying, I hate you. I will not forgive you. I will hate you with all my heart. I mean, he delivered this statement, and I knew right then and there, this man will carry this energy, which is not good for him, not good for his health, and it'll be hard for him to move on. And when we don't forgive, we start dying even faster, because it is an energy. So let's talk about what some of the steps could be to what I call what they could be to forgiveness. The first one is really to acknowledge the pain. The first one is to really acknowledge what is it that might be going on with me that I can't forgive. What is it that's happened? You know, there's a lot of famous people that have made a lot of comments or quotes or statements about forgiveness, and some of them are even in the Bible. There's a lot of good scripture in the Bible that represents a lot of what we go on in the world. But Rumi said, the wound is the place where the light enters you. And so wherever that wound is, wherever that revenge is, wherever that lack of forgiveness is, that's a place where you can actually receive spiritual light. That's the place that you can really become a different person and to give yourself freedom. So before you can really heal in something that you say you can't forgive, is that you really have to feel that energy. You have to feel that pain. And it's not good. And as humans, we don't like feeling our pain at 100%. We want to ignore it. We want to push it aside. We want to pretend it doesn't exist. And then yet what happens is it just gets stronger and stronger, or it gets heavier and heavier. And then we're sort of pushing it aside. And what that does is that impacts our behavior. And many times you become a victim. People will become a victim. Well, this happened to me, so I can't move forward in my life. You know, when I was a little boy, this happened, or when I was 17, this happened, or my parents did this, and don't let me downplay this, because there are situations in life where I would say children and adults don't get a fair shake, and something happens that shouldn't have happened. But yet you can't go through your life using that as a reason not to live your life. And so you have to ask yourself, when you acknowledge the pain, is that first, who hurt you and how did it affect you? You know, what was it? Secondly, you know, is it a specific something that happened? You know, your boyfriend or your girlfriend lied to you or cheated on you. That hurts. That hurts. And you ask yourself, can I forgive them? Can you forgive them? The other part is, how is this pain of lack of forgiveness and the event that happened, how's it holding you back? How's it holding you back? Is it affecting your emotions? Is it affecting your health? Are you just constantly thinking about this? Can you not sleep at night because you keep thinking this over and over and over in your head? And you're like, this is like driving me crazy. Well, guess what? It is driving you crazy. And that's why you want to address it. So the first step is really to acknowledge it and then write it down. What is it? You know, what is it that's really affecting you? Write it down, look at it, read it, see it. Because when it's in your head, it's in a different place. When it's on a piece of paper, you're now seeing it. So it's very, very important to take that first step. And there may be many situations. I can think of a lot of situations in my life. I mean, I can't just point to one thing. You know, I can say, oh, wow, this happened when I was young, and this happened. You know, I was bullied as a teenager, or, you know, or my mother was abusive, or my father did this, or my brother did this. I mean, I can look at a lot of situations. And I have to say that for many years, I carried a lot of anger, and I carried a lot of lack of forgiveness for things that happened in my life, but mainly because I didn't know how to forgive. And I didn't have anyone at that time that could give me advice or guide me or help me or even help me identify what I was dealing with. I just know that I had sort of this attitude like, don't mess with me. You know, it was like, don't mess with me because I'm angry. And I also learned that there were situations that I was angry at one person, but I was really more angry at another. I didn't realize that because the other person didn't protect me. And then you learn that and you go, oh my goodness, I was more angry at that person than this person. But once you learn that, you can let it go. And that's what's so important about being able to acknowledge what it is. The next step is really identify your emotions. What are the emotions? Are you a victim all the time? Do you cry all the time? Are you a recluse? Do you stay at home? I can't go out in the world because this happened to me, and I have to just sort of live at home and stay at home because something bad might happen when I go back out into the world. Or do you, do you really just shut down? So you really have to identify the emotions. Or are you just an angry person? You're angry all the time. You're judging others. You're angry at this person. You're driving really fast. You're doing all these things that you're trying to release what you feel inside, but you haven't really identified what that emotion is. And therefore, you can't let it go. It's like, what is it? What is the emotion? What's driving me? And what's really important is like, it's okay to be angry, but you must be angry in an appropriate way. In fact, we talked about this before. But there's a famous statement by, don't let the sun go down on your anger, which means get rid of it in a day. Figure it out, whatever time it takes, but get rid of it. Work on it. Don't let the sun go down on your anger every single day, because you will not be accomplishing things in your life. And beneath every wound, beneath every situation, big or small, there's a whole set of emotions. And those emotions can be sadness, it can be anger, it can be revenge, it can be fear, betrayal, all those things that you feel. And you think, how many times have you said, as an adult, I just don't know if I can forgive that? Have you ever thought that? And that's just sort of a common thought. I don't think I can forgive that after what that person did to me. I just don't think I can. And the reality is, it's not about thinking. It's about feeling. It's about doing. So when you suppress your emotions, guess what? You're suppressing your energy. Again, we are energy. We are a light. We are meant to come here to be this bright light in the world. And you have to acknowledge them, and until you do, they're going to have a grip on you. They're going to really hold on to you. So here's some thoughts. What emotions are you feeling right now? Or what emotions did you feel last week over a situation or something? Which of these emotions do you feel the most intensely? It's like, think about road rage. Like, you may just be sweet and pleasant, everything's going good in your life, you get on the road, somebody cuts you off, you're like, all of a sudden, this emotion comes up. And you're like, who is that person to cut in front of me? Who is that person to almost cause me to have an accident? And then you're like, I'm just really, and then like you want to speed up and you want to be behind that person. And as simple as it sounds, you have to really just sort of step back and you have to go, okay, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm okay with that. These are little things that build up over time, but they're being fueled by an inner anger. Something that's going on inside. And then the other question to ask yourself, where is this emotion? Is it in your heart or your chest area? Is it in your solar plexus, your stomach, your intestinal area? Is it in your back? A lot of people have back pain, and a lot of that back pain comes from sometimes not feeling supported, not feeling as though you were given the support that you deserved. A lot of people have shoulder pain. There's all kinds of aches and pains in our body, and sometimes they are the result of an energy that we're holding in our body. So what is something that you could do once you start feeling these emotions? Breathing. Breathing is one of the best exercises to be able to reduce an emotion. And whether you're in trauma, or whether you're just feeling a pain within yourself, or even sadness, a breathing technique, slow breathing, slowing down, focusing on what you're feeling, focusing on where it is, and just slowly breathing can help you begin to dissolve or start to dissolve some emotions that are within you. I know that one time I was working with a client and she became very emotional about something that had happened in her life, and she started getting almost frantic, and I was like, no, let's breathe. We're going to breathe right now. Stop. Breathe with me. Breathe. And the more that we were breathing together, the calmer she became. When people have panic attacks, one of the best ways is to get them to start breathing, is to slowly breathe. And where is it? Are you feeling it in your chest? Are you feeling it in your head? Where are you feeling that panic, that adrenaline, that energy? And you focus on that and you breathe into that area. And that's also a great technique when you're just reminiscing on something that you're angry about or that you feel like you can't forgive. And breathing is a great way to bring that energy back into alignment. The other part, or the next step, I would say step 3, you have to take responsibility for your role in the situation. You've always heard it takes 2 to tango. Well, the reality is that you have a role in every situation. It just may be that you don't see it. You only see the other side role. The other person is what the other person did to me. It's what the other person said to me. And your role could be in, let's just say someone is being extremely insulting and just belittling you and just saying terrible things, and you're just standing there and you're getting angry, but the role is that maybe you're not setting a boundary. Maybe you haven't set boundaries in the past, and that person knows that they can just step into your boundary. And so what's really happening is you're angry at yourself because you're allowing that person to do that. So you have to always ask yourself, what is your role in this? You know, it's, and again, it's not blame, because I want to try to separate blame from when something happens to someone. But as an example, take someone that was attacked in their own home, but they didn't lock their door. That was your role. That was the role that you played. Yes, it's terrible. Someone should never come into your home and attack you. But if you didn't lock your door, then you have a role in that. Doesn't mean you meant to, but you do. We always have a role in any situation. You know, if I think of some of my situations where I feel like maybe I was very unfairly blamed for some things, I do realize now I could look back later on that and go, wow, part of my role in this is I was being somewhat aloof in paying attention to what was actually going on around me. That I was just kind of ignoring what was going on. And then when it comes to a point that then all of a sudden, you know, you're sort of hit in the face with it, then I realized my role was because I wasn't being on top of this. Or I wasn't, you know, I was just being naive. I was just assuming. I wasn't investigating. So you have to always know that there's always 2 sides to any situation. And also, too, when it comes to forgiveness, when it comes to a situation, in many cases, it boils down to the other person's perception. Their perception, like it could be a child saying, you are a terrible parent. Well, that was their perception, but you may not have been a terrible parent. It just was their perception that you weren't doing what they needed. And for them, now they're angry. You know, look at what my parents did to me. Look at what I turned out to be because of what my parents did and said to me. Of course, now that person's being a victim. But the point is that was their perception. And we have to understand that sometimes. We have to understand that if your best friend all of a sudden is deceiving you, you have to sit back and go, what was the perception initially that they were my friend, and now they're deceiving me, or they're lying to me, or they're not telling me the truth, or they're treating me poorly. What is their perception? Why would they be doing that? So you have to ask yourself that question. What was your role? You know, did you have any expectations of an event or a person that should happen, but they didn't really know what the expectations were? That's one situation that occurs a lot. Also, did you ignore red flags or warning signs? That was me. There were some situations in my life I just ignored warning signs completely. I just didn't pay attention. And then the other part is that, is there any area where you need to forgive yourself? Because we have to forgive ourselves. If we don't forgive ourselves, we'll always carry that energy. Because in the end, that's who we need to forgive. Not as much the other person as it is ourselves. So it's also imperative that you write down, like, what could you take responsibility for? What could you have taken responsibility for if you go back and look at a situation? And let's say any situation that you haven't resolved within yourself. So step 4 is that you really have to release the need for revenge. And I can't tell you how much revenge will impact us. It will impact how we speak. It'll impact how we act. It'll impact how we feel. It will impact how everyone feels about you because they see that energy. And I've said this before, we're in a world now where energy is much more prominent. It's where we feel each other's energy. We just kind of sense things now that we didn't sense before. And we are now in that world. It's going to get stronger and stronger. And the need for resolving any type of negative energy is very important in order to move forward and to bring peace into your own heart. It's very important to be able to step more and more into that role of what I call forgiveness. So think about, have you ever had a time in your life that you were really angry and that you were revengeful? Have you ever thought about that? You know, people get divorced. Oh, there's no more revenge than in a divorce situation. I mean, I've seen many people in tremendous revenge. And it's interesting because it didn't seem like they were that revengeful toward each other until the court battle starts. And then the next thing you know, it's like pure hatred toward each other. And the more that the hatred grows, the more unwilling parties are to come to some kind of resolution. And then it becomes revenge. I'll show you. And the worst thing that can happen in divorces is I'll show you by using the kids to get back at you. That's the worst form of revenge. And I know hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands and thousands of people, couples, who have done this to each other. And hopefully in the long run, they resolved their issues and they stopped using their kids. But here's the worst part. When people use their kids in a divorce, what does that do to the kids? Then the kids get angry. And then the kids go, look what my dad did to me. Look what my mom did to me. Look what my dad did to my mom. Look what my mom did to my dad. This is the worst form of revenge. It's really, really a horrible situation. And I'm very hopeful that in the future in the world that we do less and less of that. That people do less and less for that. Because what happens is, like, I want justice. And people get just this anger just grows and grows and grows. So we know what happens is when you go into revenge, it drains your energy. And as I said earlier, you're only hurting yourself. You're only putting yourself in a negative situation. So ask yourself this question. Are you waiting for somebody to apologize to you so that you can get rid of this revenge? And then the question with the revenge, will that stop? And then also, how would it feel if you were able to release this burden? Now let me say, there's a difference between apologizing and saying I'm sorry. There's a big difference. Do you know people in your world right now, in your environment, that every little thing they do, they bump you, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, hey, you didn't fill this form out. Oh, I'm sorry. Hey, you parked your car too close to me. Oh, I'm sorry. You know, it's like sorry, sorry everywhere. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. So sorry has kind of lost its value. And you know, another way, and I'm not saying that people shouldn't say this, because I do believe that they're being authentic, but it's become such a common nature of people saying, I'm sorry for your loss. And it's been said so many times that it doesn't even seem like it has a meaning anymore. You know, even on social media, and I know they mean well. I know people mean well. I'm sorry for your loss. However, those individuals probably would feel more connected if you were able to give a message, a little more connected message. And you know, I think part of the problem is because we have so many TV shows on that are like police type shows where all the cops and the police go, oh, sorry for your loss, sorry for your loss. That's a common thing on TV shows. So I'd like to encourage you that when you know someone or are close to someone who has had the loss of a loved one, is to think about how you could connect personally. Even if you said, I just want to give you an air hug. I just want to, you know, I want to send love your way. That is so much more meaningful. And it also preps you for being more in a loving mode and starts to bring what I believe is called forgiveness energy. Because forgiveness energy is love. That's really what it is. So when you find yourself in a situation of revenge, and I think we've all had a moment of it at some point. I know that even when I was in high school, for whatever reason, I don't know why, I never figured it out, but there was just this small group of girls, of like 4 girls, and for some reason they never liked me. And every chance they got, they would bully me or say terrible things to me. And one time, I was just sitting in a chair and they all came by and kicked me. You know, I was like 13, 14 years old. And I was like, boy, I'm going to get those girls back. I can't wait. I'm going to get them back. And it just so happened that I played basketball. And they had joined the team. And I was like, boy, I'm going to get them. I'm going to trip them when they're trying to stop me from dribbling to the goal. And I'll push them really hard and I'll do this. And I realized that was just revenge. And we should have been a team. The reality was we were supposed to be a team. We were on the same team. But the whole time I kept thinking of ways that I could get back at them because they were bullying me. And then literally one day I realized that we weren't winning a lot of games. And I realized that a lot of that was because my focus was getting back at them than it was being part of the team to potentially win the game. And when I shifted my mindset in that, we started winning. And it made a huge difference. And I started complimenting them. And I started saying, great, you know, you were really good out there. And I began to compliment them over and over and over. I just let my feelings go about how they treated me. And before I knew it, within a year, we were all good friends. And I literally just took the action of ignoring what they were doing. I guess in a way, inside I was forgiving them. I was just letting it go. I wasn't allowing my emotions to get in the way anymore. And I realized that it made a huge difference. So you want to try your best to stay away from revenge. Now, if you find right now that you're in a situation where there's something you just haven't quite forgiven, one of the things you can do is you can write a letter. You don't necessarily have to speak directly to someone to forgive them, because they could have passed, or they could live in another state, or you just don't even know how to contact them. You could actually sit down and write a long letter, write everything out that you felt, just basically put it all on the piece of paper. It doesn't matter what you write, and let that go. And sometimes in the spiritual situations, we say, burn it and let it go out into the universe. Just let the ashes flow. Put it behind you. So what you want to do is ask yourself, can you see this person or this situation as flawed? That maybe there was something going on with them. when whatever they did, what they did, and that maybe they had a lot of pain. And then can you see how this experience may also have led to some personal growth in your own life? That, wow, that happened. I really didn't like that person, but I learned an awful lot about myself. And I learned that I'm not going to do that again, because that really inflamed that individual. So you may have actually had a positive moment out of a negative moment. And then also, once you learned something and discovered that, wow, this was really interesting, can you literally address something else that may have happened in your life that gave you a situation to change? I can honestly say that my divorce gave me a tremendous amount of learning. My divorce was a way for me to learn how to see someone in terms of who they are and realize that, you know, they really are not a bad person, and that we just came together in that time and in that moment of being married over that time to learn something. And we were able to move on and continue to learn. And I was able to look back and go, this actually, I can see this as a good thing. And a lot of times people have trouble doing that. But if you can look at what the good that comes out of any situation, then you're on the path to forgiveness immediately. Because you're able to say, wow, I don't like what happened, but I realize I've learned something and I can get even better from this. I can grow. So the point is that always reflect after a situation and say, what did I learn from this? How can I move forward? How can I forgive? Step 6 is really to forgive the other person and forgive yourself. Because you really have to forgive yourself. In that you allowed yourself to get to this emotional state that really wasn't healthy. And even if it's a small situation, it's still not healthy. Because little situations can build into big situations. And it doesn't mean that when something happened that it was right. It doesn't mean if someone embezzled, thousands of dollars from your bank account, that's not right. That's not right. But you also don't know what were they going through. I mean, when a person does something like that, there's something going on in their life for sure. And doesn't mean that you have to accept that because someone taking money out of your bank account, like right now we have all this fraud, we have all these crooks in the world. Yes, they're bad people. But if you maintain an energy of protecting yourself and not carrying energy of, oh, I'm afraid someone's going to hack my account, I'm afraid this is going to happen, what would I do if this were to happen? You're carrying an energy of potentially creating that. If you are a person that says, I am working on being balanced, I forgive those that there's some situation that probably wasn't fair to me, but I'm not going to stay in that energy. I'm not going to stay there. Because when you stay there, you will create more. Energy is sort of like doing the same old thing just brings you the same old thing. So if you're constantly being in fear, you're going to constantly create fear. And you have to forgive yourself because once you do, you feel free. And sometimes it's hard. You're like, okay, I forgive myself. And then you're like, okay, am I feeling it? Am I really feeling this now? If you're not, then do it again. I forgive myself. You have to release the weight of whatever the burden is. And then again, it's about being compassionate toward yourself. I want you to think about too that sometimes in these types of situations, something really good comes out of it that could be worldwide. I know that there have been many people that have lost children to tragic death like a murder, and they created a national organization to help families of similar type situations. And now they're putting out good in the world. And they forgave the criminal that harmed their child or murdered their child. They forgave them. In fact, there was a story. I think it was on Dr. Phil. I was watching it many years ago. And Dr. Phil brought this woman on his show, and maybe in her 50s, and a teenager, about 18 or 19, broke into her house, tied her up, beat her, was actually telling her he was going to kill her, of which he ended up not doing, but he did rob her house, and he was ultimately found, caught, and prosecuted. And because of the severity of the beating that he had given this woman and her injuries, and the fact that he had robbed her home and he had threatened her, telling her he was going to kill her, he got like 25 years in prison. And he was young. I think he was like 18 or 19. And after the woman healed and was able to get herself mobile again, the first thing she did was go to that prison and visit that young man, because she knew he was just a young man. And she told him on that day, "I forgive you." And he was shocked. He was like, "What do you mean? How can you forgive me? I did terrible things." And she goes, "No, I forgive you because I love you. And I understand that you came from a really bad place, and you didn't have guidance, and you've had the wrong influence, and that's what drove you to do the things that you did, but I lived." And she said, "I believe that I lived so that I could forgive you and hopefully help you release the fact that what you did was a terrible thing, but that you can overcome this and you can change." And apparently, he became so overcome and so emotional and so distraught about what she was telling him, is that he said to her, I realize, how can you love me? But if this is what you're going to do, can you help me?" And so she continued to visit this young man for many years, and ultimately helped in his release. And he was released. And so Dr. Phil brought her and brought him on his show. And they told the story of forgiveness. And that was a beautiful story. And this young man became a better person because of what happened, and because she was willing to forgive him. And you can say that was something really good that came out of this. And that's what forgiveness can do. It can change a person's life, and it can definitely change your life. So what is the last step in forgiveness that we can take? And that's really call in your divine support. Call in your spirit guides. Pray, meditate, ask for support. When you feel that you cannot overcome a situation, ask for help. Go to therapy, talk to a friend, talk to family members, work on it. Just work on it, but be true, be authentic, be honest. Let your feelings be real. And you'll find at this point that when you're able to call in your spiritual support, it helps you release your pain. And it helps you understand what your next step is. Forgiveness is something that our world would be better off if we could learn forgiveness everywhere. Right now we have wars, we have anger, we have hatred, and a lot of this is because of the lack of forgiveness. It's the lack of being willing and able to forgive people for things that they do that maybe make us feel uncomfortable or make us feel less than. And if we all practiced some form of forgiveness, then our world would be a better place. So I want you to just take a minute. I'd like for you to close your eyes and just imagine right now that there's this beautiful white light, just a bright, bright light. And I always like to think of it as like glitter, just this beautiful glitter of light that's just sort of swirling all around you, all above you. It's just you're totally encased in this like a snowstorm of glitter all around you. And I want you to feel this light in your body. And like every instance, which I know you won't remember, but every instance in a moment that someone did something that hurt you. And you don't need to know what they all are, but just think in this moment that this white light, this beautiful light is pouring into all those areas and into those emotional places and into those feelings. And that it's filling up every spot, every space that may be inside your heart space, inside your solar plexus, around your back, and all the way down to the ground. And that no matter what comes up, you can forgive. That you can step into the world of forgiveness. And repeat this in your mind, silently, that you're calling on Spirit of Peace. I release all burdens in my heart. I call on your divine presence. Come fill me with love, compassion, and grace. I choose freedom. I choose peace. And I choose forgiveness. May I be the light that I came here to be. Keep your eyes closed. I'm going to turn on our meditation.